Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into some soulful sax. Today we're going to be exploring the life and music of Sue Terry.
Oh, yeah. Sue Terry.
Now you might know her as Sweet Sue Terry,
Right.
but trust me, we're going way beyond that nickname to uncover the depth of this incredible musician. And
Right.
we've got this really fascinating outline of a podcast episode
Okay.
all about her journey. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, it's packed with unexpected details.
It's amazing how much you can pull from even a simple outline
Oh,
when you really start to dig in.
yeah. And speaking of digging in,
Okay.
we need to rewind all the way back to Terry's early years in Connecticut.
Right. Back to the beginning.
Yeah, this is where things get interesting because she didn't exactly pick up the saxophone right away.
Right. Not a straight path to those soaring soprano sax solos.
No.
Her musical journey began with, of all things, the accordion.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Can you imagine? Accordion.
Oh.
Then it was on to the clarinet, and then finally she landed on the soprano saxophone as her true voice.
So it's like she was sampling different flavors before finding the perfect blend.
I like that.
Do you think that early exposure to such diverse instruments play a role in her versatility later on?
Absolutely. Think about the different breathing techniques, fingerings,
Oh, yeah.
musical approaches required for each instrument.
Totally.
It creates a well-rounded musician,
Right.
someone who's comfortable moving between styles and sounds.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of influences, the outline mentions her dad's jazz record collection as her first real music education.
Oh, wow. What a lucky break.
Right?
That's incredible.
Talk about a home advantage.
It's like having a personal library of jazz history right at your fingertips.
Yeah.
I bet those records sparked a lifelong passion and exposed you to such a wide range of styles.
Totally. Okay, so fast forward a bit. She studies at the Hart School, right?
Yes, that's right.
And gets mentored by the legendary Jackie McLean.
Oh, yeah.
That's a name that carries some serious weight.
Big Time McLean was a true innovator, known for his fiery alto sax playing and his unique approach to bebop.
Wow.
To have someone like that recognize your talent,
Yeah.
encourage you to pursue your dreams, it's huge.
And it seems like he saw something special in her because he encouraged her to move to the ultimate jazz hub, New York City.
Oh, yeah.
I can only imagine what it must have been like for a young musician to land in that scene.
New York in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, yeah.
It was a melting pot of musical talent. Just incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, for Terry, it was a chance to immerse herself in the heart of it all, learn from the masters, hone her craft.
She even connected with giants like Clifford Jordan and Junior Cook,
Oh,
who were leading figures in the hard bop movement.
Absolutely shaping the sound of jazz.
Wow, talk about an intense learning environment.
Yeah,
And then, of course, there's Barry Harris.
Right.
He's the one who gave her that catchy nickname, Sweet Sue.
that's right.
I'm sensing a pattern here. Seems like she was surrounded by some seriously talented mentors.
Absolutely. And to be in that orbit, to absorb their knowledge, be part of that creative energy,
Yeah.
it's invaluable.
But even with those incredible mentors, at some point, an artist needs to find their own voice, right?
Exactly. You have to break free from those influences and forge your own path.
To break free, and that's where this name change from Sweet Sue to simply Sue Terry becomes really interesting.
Interesting.
It's not just a cosmetic change, right?
No, it suggests a deeper shift,
Yeah.
an assertion of artistic identity.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Was this just about shedding a nickname? Or was there something more profound going on? It makes me wonder about the timing of this change. Did it coincide with a particular shift in her music or career?
Well, if we look at the timeline, the name change seems to happen right around the time she starts making a name for herself as a band leader in the 1980s, particularly in the hard bop scene.
So maybe it's about taking ownership of her music, stepping out of the shadows of her mentors and declaring, this is who I am as an artist. But hold on, before we jump too far ahead, let's unpack this hard bop scene a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly does that mean musically?
Think of it as this fiery, soulful extension of bebop,
Okay,
but with a more bluesy, earthy feel.
gotcha.
It's all about complex harmonies, intricate rhythms, an improvisation that's both virtuosic and deeply expressive.
And Sue Terry was right in the thick of it,
Oh, yeah.
leading the charge during a time when female saxophonists in that scene were pretty rare.
Absolutely.
That takes guts and talent.
It's one thing to be a skilled musician.
Right.
It's another to break down barriers and carve out your own space in a male-dominated genre.
So it sounds like this is a pivotal moment in her career.
Yeah.
It's not just about mastering her instrument. It's
No.
about stepping into her power as a band leader and an innovator.
Exactly. And it's also the point where her collaborative spirit really shines.
Oh, yeah.
The outline mentions collaborations with some huge names across different genres.
Okay.
George Duke,
Wow.
Dr. John,
Okay.
Al Jarreau, Chaka Khan.
Wow, that's quite the lineup.
It's an impressive list.
Okay. I'm ready to dive into those collaborations. Let's start with George Duke. He was a master of jazz fusion, right? Blending all these different elements into his music. I bet working with someone like that really pushed Terry's boundaries.
Definitely. Duke was known for his adventurous spirit, his willingness to experiment with different sounds and textures.
Mm-hmm.
Collaborating with him would have exposed Terry to a whole new world of musical possibilities,
Right.
pushing her to think outside the box and expand her sonic palette.
I can only imagine the creative sparks flying in those sessions.
Yeah.
It's like she's this musical chameleon adapting to different environments and adding her unique flavor to the mix. But even with all this collaborative energy, she was still making waves in the hard bop scene, what set her apart as a saxophonist in that world.
This is where we need to dive into her playing style. The outline mentions Inside the Mind of a Musician, her book, as a good resource for understanding her approach.
Okay, so what can you tell us about her sound, her technique? What makes a Sue Terry solo instantly recognizable?
First of all, her articulation is incredibly precise.
Okay.
It's like every note is perfectly sculpted, crystal clear.
Yeah.
And then there's her phrasing, which is anything but predictable.
Mm-hmm.
It's full of these unexpected twists and turns, these moments of rhythmic surprise that keep you on the edge of your seat.
It's like she's having a conversation with the music, responding to each phrase with wit and personality.
I love that.
I bet those extended techniques she uses add another layer of intrigue to her playing.
Absolutely. Extended techniques are like special effects for the saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
They go beyond the traditional ways of playing and create these unusual sounds, textures, and effects.
It's like she's expanding the vocabulary of the instrument.
Exactly.
So it's clear that Sue Terry is more than just a sweet saxophonist.
Oh, yeah.
There's fire precision and a fearless willingness to experiment in her playing. But before we get too lost in those saxophone sounds, let's shift gears and talk about another fascinating aspect of her career, her dedication to education.
Okay.
The outline mentions her books, Practice Like the Pros, the Step 1 series. It's like she's created a whole library for aspiring musicians.
It's a testament to her generosity as a teacher. She's not just a performer. She's a mentor. Someone who's deeply invested in nurturing the next generation of jazz musicians.
And it's not just about teaching technique, right? It's about passing on a love for the music, inspiring young musicians to find their own voices.
Exactly. It's about fostering that creative spark, that sense of possibility. And, it takes a certain kind of passion to dedicate yourself to teaching alongside a demanding performance career.
It's like she's saying, this music is a gift and I want to share it with the world, but here's where things take a turn that I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
The outline mentions that later in her career, she started incorporating Qigong and Taijiquan into her music.
Interesting.
Now, I'll admit this one has me scratching my head a bit.
Okay.
What does that even mean? How do you blend ancient Chinese practices with jazz saxophone?
It's definitely an intriguing twist, and it speaks to her willingness to explore beyond conventional boundaries. To understand this connection, we need to understand a bit about Qigong and Taijiquan. They're both about cultivating energy flow and balance through mindful movement and breathing techniques.
Okay, I'm starting to see a possible link here. Breath control is crucial for both saxophone playing and these practices. Is that where the connection lies?
It's definitely a key element. Imagine how a deeper awareness of breath, cultivated through practices like Qigong, could translate to more nuanced phrasing, more expressive solos, and even a different kind of stage presence.
Okay, that's starting to make sense. It's like she's tapping into a deeper well of energy and focus, and that's somehow finding its way into her music. But
Yeah.
we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, from accordion beginnings to hard bop solos and now ancient Chinese practices. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to explore this Qigong and Taijiquan connection in more depth. How exactly does it manifest in her music? What impact has it had on her creative process? And could it be linked to that intriguing name change?
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Sue Terry. It's amazing how much we've already uncovered, but I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface.
It's true. We've gone from her unusual beginnings on the accordion to those fiery, hard bop solos, and now we're venturing into the realm of Qigong and Taijiquan.
Yeah, it's like later we peel back reveals another facet of this incredible musician.
Definitely.
Okay, so before we get too deep into those ancient practices, I'm curious to hear more about what it was like to actually see her perform live during this era. The outline mentioned she was playing everywhere from intimate clubs to big festivals. Paint me a picture. What was the Sue Terry experience like?
Imagine this. A dimly lit jazz club, smoky atmosphere, the murmur of conversation, and then she steps onto the stage.
Okay.
Suddenly the energy shifts. There's this hush that falls over the room as she lifts the saxophone to her lips.
Okay, I'm hooked already. What happens next?
The first notes flow out, and it's like a wave of sound washing over you. Her presence is captivating. But it's not about showmanship. It's about this deep connection with the music, this intensity that radiates from her as she plays.
And sonically, what's grabbing you? Are we hearing those hard bop influences we talked about earlier?
Absolutely. You hear those complex harmonies, those intricate rhythms, but there's also a tenderness, a vulnerability that shines through.
Okay.
It's like she's telling a story with each phrase drawing you into her world.
It's giving me chills just imagining it. And what about the audience? Are people tapping their feet, snapping their fingers, lost in the groove?
Oh, totally. There's this palpable energy exchange happening between her and the audience. People are leaning forward, eyes closed, completely absorbed in the music. It's like a collective trance, a shared experience of pure musical bliss.
Okay. I'm officially convinced that I need to experience this for myself. Are there any recordings from this era that you'd recommend?
Absolutely. If you want to hear her in that fiery hard bop mode, Gilly's Caper is a fantastic album.
Gilly's Caper?
Yeah, it captures that raw energy and showcases her incredible improvisational skills.
Got it. Adding it to my list right now. But, you know, it strikes me that even with all the success as a performer, Suteri never abandoned her commitment to education.
Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it?
It's like she's constantly nurturing the future of jazz.
It speaks volumes about her character. She's not just focused on her own success. She's deeply invested in empowering others to discover the joy and power of music.
We talked about her books earlier. Practice Like the Pros seems like a must-read for any aspiring musician. What's the vibe of that one? Is it like a tough love boot camp, or is it more of a gentle guide?
It's a bit of both, actually.
Yeah.
She doesn't shy away from the hard work and dedication required to master an instrument, but she does it in a way that's encouraging and inspiring. It's like having a personal mentor cheering you on every step of the way.
And then there's her Step 1 series. It sounds like she's created a whole roadmap for beginners to get started on different instruments.
Exactly. It's like she's saying, here's the door, come on in, let's make some music together. And her approach is so clear and approachable that it makes learning feel less intimidating and more like a fun adventure.
It makes me wonder, does she ever talk about her own early experiences learning music in her books? It would be fascinating to hear about her journey from struggling student to seasoned professional.
That's a great point.
Hmm.
I bet those early experiences shaped her approach to teaching. Speaking of shaping, we can't forget about her other book, Inside the Mind of a Musician. It's not just about technique, it's about the mental and emotional aspects of playing music.
Okay, now we're getting into the deep stuff.
Yeah.
I'm picturing a journey into the creative process, the challenges, the breakthroughs, the moments of doubt, and those bursts of pure inspiration.
Exactly. She delves into her own struggles, her triumphs, and the lessons she's learned along the way. It's like a glimpse into the inner workings of a master musician. A reminder that even the greats face obstacles and have to work hard to achieve their goals.
You know, it strikes me that this exploration of the inner mind might be connected to her later interest in Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan. These practices are all about cultivating inner awareness, right?
You're onto something there. It's like she's always been on this quest to understand the deeper connections between mind, body, and music. Maybe these ancient practices provided a new framework for that exploration.
So how did this Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan influence actually manifest in her music? Did it change her sound, her approach to improvisation?
Well, it's subtle, but
Yeah.
if you listen closely, you start to notice these shifts. Her phrasing becomes even more fluid, like water flowing over rocks.
Yeah.
There's a sense of spaciousness in her solos, a willingness to let the notes breathe.
It's like those practices have given her music a new dimension of depth and serenity. I'm picturing a Tai Chi master moving with grace and precision, and somehow that translates to those soulful saxophone melodies.
It's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
And, it makes you think about that name change again. Maybe shedding the Sweet Sue nickname wasn't just about simplifying her name, but about embracing a more authentic, holistic expression of herself.
I love that interpretation. It's like she's saying, this is who I am now, a musician who's not just skilled, but also deeply connected to my inner self. But hold on, before we go too far down that philosophical path, I want to loop back to something you mentioned earlier, the collaborative spirit we touched on her work with George Duke. But the outline lists so many other incredible collaborations. Were there any others that stood out to you?
Her work with Dr. John is definitely worth exploring. He's this larger-than-life figure steeped in the musical traditions of New Orleans blues, funk, R&B, even a touch of voodoo.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What was it like when those two musical worlds collided?
Imagine this mystical, swampy groove infused with Suteri's soaring soprano sax. It's like a musical gumbo, a blend of the earthy and the ethereal.
Oh, wow, that sounds incredible. I'm definitely adding some Dr. John collaborations to my listening list, but I think we've reached a natural transition point here. We've talked about her live performances, her teaching her books, and those fascinating collaborations. Now I'm ready to dive even deeper into this Qigong and Taiji Quan connection.
Let's go for it. I think we're just beginning to understand how these ancient practices might have unlocked new levels of creativity and expression in her music.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're in the final stretch of our exploration of Suteri. And I have to say, this Qigong and Taiji Quan connection has me completely captivated. It's like we've stumbled upon this hidden passageway in her musical journey.
Yeah, it really speaks to her constant evolution as an artist, her willingness to draw inspiration from such unexpected sources. Remember how we were talking about her Inside the Mind of a Musician book?
Yeah.
It's almost like these practices gave her a whole new set of tools to explore those inner landscapes.
Okay, but before we get too esoteric, can we back up a bit? For those of us who might not be familiar with these practices, could you give us like a quick refresher on what Qigong and Taiji Quan are all about?
Sure, so imagine cultivating a deep awareness of your breath, your body, and the energy that flows through you. That's the essence of Qigong. It involves specific postures, breathing techniques, and focused attention to enhance your vitality and well-being.
Okay.
Taiji Quan, often described as moving meditation. It builds on these principles, incorporating slow, graceful movements that flow seamlessly from one to the next.
So it's not just about physical movement, it's about cultivating this state of inner harmony and balance. But how does this translate to the world of jazz saxophone? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that connection.
Let's think about it this way. Breath is the foundation of both music and these practices.
Okay.
In Qigong and Taiji Quan, breath is seen as this life force, a bridge between mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
Similarly, for a saxophone player, breath is the source of sound, the fuel that brings the music to life.
That makes sense. So by deepening her awareness of breath through these practices, she's essentially enhancing her musical expression at its most fundamental level.
Exactly. It's like she's tapping into a more refined and conscious way of breathing, which in turn allows her to shape the music with greater nuance and control.
And it's not just breath control, right? We talked about fluidity and spaciousness in her playing. Could that be connected to the flowing movements of Taiji Quan?
Absolutely imagine how the smooth, continuous movements of Taiji Quan might translate to a more relaxed and effortless approach to playing the saxophone. The transitions between notes become smoother, the phrases flow more naturally, and there's a sense of ease and grace in every movement.
It's like she's embodied those principles of balance and flow in her music. I'm starting to hear it now, a calmness, a centeredness that wasn't there before.
And think about improvisation in both Taiji Quan and jazz. There's this element of spontaneity, of responding to the moment with creativity and intuition. Maybe these practices enhanced her ability to let go, to trust her instincts, and to allow the music to flow through her more freely.
You know, it makes me think about that famous quote from Bruce Lee, "Be like water, my friend." It's about adaptability, fluidity, and the ability to move effortlessly with the changing circumstances. It's almost like Suteri has taken that philosophy and applied it to her music.
That's a great connection, and it reminds us that artistic expression isn't just about technical skill. It's about channeling something deeper, something that connects us to a larger flow of energy and creativity.
Okay, I have to ask, when did she start incorporating these practices into her music? Was it a gradual shift, or was there a specific turning point?
Well, based on the timeline we have, it seems to coincide with that period in the late 90s and early 2000s when she was touring extensively with the U.S. State Department, performing in all sorts of cultural contexts around the world.
Wow, that's fascinating. So maybe those experiences exposed her to new ways of thinking about music and its role in the world. It's like she was absorbing all these different cultural influences and integrating them into her own artistic practice.
Exactly. And, it's a reminder that creative growth often happens when we step outside of our comfort zones, when we expose ourselves to new ideas and perspectives.
You know, it's funny, when we started this deep dive, I thought we were going to be focusing mainly on her saxophone, playing her technical skills, her influences, but this conversation has taken us so much deeper. It's about her evolution as a person, her spiritual journey, and her willingness to embrace new ways of being and creating.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of music to transcend boundaries, to connect us to something larger than ourselves, and to reflect the complexities of the human experience.
Beautifully said. Okay, as we wrap up our exploration of Suteri, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on what makes her such a unique and compelling figure in the world of jazz.
For me, it's the combination of her mastery of her instrument, her fearless experimentation, her unwavering dedication to education, and her willingness to challenge the very definition of what it means to be a jazz musician. She's constantly pushing boundaries, exploring new territories, and inspiring us to do the same.
I couldn't agree more. Sue Terry's journey reminds us that artistry is a lifelong pursuit, a process of discovery and transformation. She encourages us to embrace our own creative potential, to seek inspiration in unexpected places, and to never stop evolving.
And who knows what incredible music she'll create next. I, for one, am excited to see where her path leads and what new sonic landscapes she'll explore.
Me too, and for our listeners, if you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out Sue Terry's music. You'll be amazed by her artistry, her energy, and her ability to transport you to another world with the sound of her saxophone.
And remember, as Sue Terry's journey reminds us, the exploration of music and the exploration of self are often intertwined.
Yeah.
So what can you discover within yourself that might inspire your own creative expression? That's something to ponder as we conclude our deep dive into the world of Sue Terry.
What a fantastic note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep the music playing.